All right, everybody, welcome to Tying It All Together, Achieving a Seamless Year-End HR Plan. I'm here with my partner in crime, Christina Fiorenza. She is our Senior HR Advisor here at Thread, and I am the CHRO. That's a position I gave myself because it sounded important. So we are here to help you as much as we can come up with a good plan for the end of the year and the beginning of year for 2024. Basically, we're going to talk about some things to think about, some to-dos concerning yourself and your career, and just to help you tie it all together and feel confident in the direction that you are headed. Everybody who is attending is muted because we are recording today's session. We will make it available after the session on our website for anybody who wants to revisit or share with coworkers or friends. And in the follow-up to the email, you will get any resources that we mentioned during the email, as well as you will get the credit. If you are looking for credits for HRCI or SHRM for your recertification, you will get the codes for those as well on the follow-up email. And then, as always, if you have any questions as we're going through this, please feel free to text them right in the chat, and we will be monitoring that, and we will answer them as we go along.
All right, but let's start with ourselves first. Us people in HR, we're always worried about everybody else in the company and policies, and we'll get to all that fun stuff, but let's talk about us first. So as Scott just mentioned, the HR certification status, check in and see where you are. Remember that you need 10 hours of ethics credits this time around. See what other areas you need more credits and go find those and make sure that you take care of those before your certification lapses. We're also going to look at a health checkup. Have you been to the doctor lately? How are you feeling? You sleeping okay? Make sure that you take care of yourself so that you can then take care of others. Growth opportunities. Want to make sure that we don't get stuck where we are, right? Want to grow and learn more. Are you interested in training? Are you interested in, payroll? Whatever it is, make sure that you are continuing to grow your knowledge. There's articles all over the place. There's free webinars such as this one. So sign up for those and make sure that you're broadening your knowledge. This is a big one. Make that decision. Is there anything that's keeping you up at night? You wake up in the middle of the night thinking about a policy, thinking about a friend, whatever it may be. Make the decision before you get to 2024 so you can start the year fresh and new, and be sure that you're laughing with friends. That's so very important. We need to make sure that we are balancing our life. We hear that work-life balance all the time. We can work, probably all of us could work 24/7 if we allowed ourselves to, but that won't make us the best HR person that we can be. So make sure that you schedule in time if you need to put it on your calendar. I know I do. So schedule in time to laugh with your friends.
Yeah, this is one of those things just to reinforce that HR people are known for always taking care of everybody else. It's one of the things that draws us to this profession is we love helping people. But you got to take time and be intentional about planning time to take care of for yourself. It's really important that you are feeling healthy and confident and ready to rock.
Absolutely. So what's going to help us HR professionals in our job is technology. So it's really going to help take a lot off of our plate. And here's some different ideas of ways to use technology. And all of this is found on iSolved. So if you don't have this portion, talk to us and we can talk about getting you into it. Applicant tracking. And even if you're a smaller company and you only hire, let's say, a couple people per year, you think, oh, I can review the resumes. But if you think about it, for each posting, I don't know about y'all, but we get hundreds of resumes for one job. And so that's really hard to go through. It's hard to keep track of. It's hard. You've got paper everywhere that you're marking down. If you use the applicant tracking system, you can actually keep those. If they're not qualified for the job you just posted, they could be qualified for the next one that you post, and you've got it all there. You know, if they've been through interviews, your managers can leave comments. It's just a great way to house all of that information in one place so that you can keep that pipeline going. Paperless onboarding has been a huge thing, a huge movement, I believe, in the last couple of years. But onboarding your employees, they can sign the handbook in there, they can fill out their page of the I-9, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Any policies and procedures that you want in there, all their tax forms, their direct deposit, all of that. And then you're not dealing with papers on your desk and where did I put that? Did they fill out the direct deposit? It's all in there, neatly packaged, and you can easily look at which forms they've completed and which ones they're missing. So if you're doing that hiring and you're bringing on people, this is, I would say for me, it's the best time saver out of anything. So definitely look into that if you're not already using that. The learning management system is built into iSolved. Also, it's an add-on, and the training information in there is huge. There's stuff from sexual harassment, safety in the workplace. There's some OSHA things in there. Cybersecurity, I just saw.
Leadership, customer service.
Yeah, management. And what's cool about that too is that you can record your own trainings and have them uploaded. And the good thing about this is you can just go into the learning management system and assign it to the people who it needs to be assigned to. As soon as they're done with the course, it automatically files in their iSolved record. So again, it all talks to each other. Performance management, this one's huge. There's lots of people that forget to document information, surprise, surprise. So having a performance management system with reminders and custom built reviews, you could do a 30, 60, 90-day review, annual reviews. There's reminders that go out to the manager. There's reminders that go out to the employee if you're doing an employee self-review or to make sure the employee signs off on the performance review. So again, all built in, all automatically files into the employee's record. And then digital posters, we've got those huge posters that we have to post in our office buildings, but so many people are now working remotely that you can sign up for posters through us, both the paper version and now there's digital versions of posters. And that just saves, like, how do I get the posters out to everybody in all the different states to make sure that we're complying with employment law?
Boom. Okay, reports and notices. We're just trying to hit some of the key things to think about as you're winding down towards the end of the year. We know that in November, people start thinking about Thanksgiving. After Halloween, you get a lot of time that's focused on wrap up, admin, cleanup, organizing, those kind of things. But think about end of year stuff here. OSHA record keeping is something that most companies need to do unless you're on that partially non-exempt list. You can look on osha.gov to see if you're on the partially exempt list, meaning that you don't have to keep these reports unless OSHA requests them. So even if you're on the list that says you don't have to do it, if OSHA asks you for them, they're going to say, well, I want to see them. So then you typically have to generate them and produce them. Once you produce these OSHA logs and summaries about your workplace injuries, you're supposed to post the summary only, not the log with detailed information with employees' names and injuries and things like that. But the summary only, you're actually supposed to be posted February 1st through April of every year. And then you keep those logs for 5 years. If you have an exposure incident, which is like a biohazard situation, somebody gets cut and bleeds on another person or something like that, then you keep that for 30 years, believe it or not. But everything else is 5 years when it comes to OSHA logs, and the summary is the only thing that gets posted. The EEO1 data and reporting is for companies with 100 employees or more, or if you have 50 employees and a government contract of a certain size, you need to do the EEO1 reporting, which is basically a breakdown of ethnic groups and men and women by pay ranges and things like that. And if you have multiple locations, you do have to fill out multiple reports for that. The portal for the EEO1 reporting is open now, and it closes December 5th. So you kind of got to get your stuff in there before December 5th. And they're asking for component 1 data, which is the standard EEO1 report. If you're a current HR client of ours and you're on iSolved with us, we can help you run that report, gather all that data, and make it super painless and easy for you. If you're not, what are you doing? Call us, get on board. We'll help you out, save you a bunch of time, make your life better. Affordable Care Act notices. You know, if you're using our benefits module in iSolved, then our team is putting together your 1094s, 1095s at the end of the year. We're also doing your W-2s on payroll. And if you're using Employee Navigator with a broker, which also has a 360 integration with iSolved, then usually the broker is producing those Affordable Care Act forms. But we will work together with your brokers to help you create those measurement periods and everything the way you want them. But just kind of go through your checklist and say, am I prepared for all of these things? Because they are coming. Usually Affordable Care Act notices and W-2s have costs associated with them. So make sure you know what those costs are and you're prepared for that as well. And then Christina just talked about posters. One question we get about posters is, if I have digital posters, do I still need to keep a paper poster hanging on the wall in my office? Well, the answer is if 100% of your employees are remote, you can go all digital on the posters. You can put a PDF in the onboarding and your new hire packet, that kind of thing. But if you have some employees who go to the office, you still have to maintain the hard copy, big all-in-one federal and state poster in the office, and you can do the digital with your remote employees. So it's a combination of both. The digital posters do not replace the hard copy unless you're 100% remote. So pre-hire process, when we put this in here, we're thinking about a lot, but in general, think about your whole process. How long does it take? How simple is it? Do you lose applicants during this process because the tolerance for tediousness has gone way down in the world in the last couple of years, and applicants will just jump off the process. If it takes them longer than 15 minutes, they'll just move on to the next one and keep going, unless they're really committed to your company. But if you're doing criminal background checks, we suggest you use a matrix, which kind of helps you determine, based on how long it's been since the conviction, what kind of conviction it is, and what kind of position the person is applying for. Is it relevant or not? Because you should kind of break down, does this matter or not? And we can help you build that, just like we do with all of our current clients. Pre-hire drug screens, if you are still doing those, you need to make sure you know what the pre-adverse and adverse action letter process is. Believe it or not, that is still a process that requires snail mail. So the government is very slow to catch up sometimes. Sometimes, 10 years later, they get on board with modern technology. But what they're saying is, if you run a background check on someone, you decide not to hire them because of what's in their background check, then you've got to send them a pre-adverse action letter, which says, we might not hire you based on what's in your background check. You have a certain amount of time to correct that and reply back to us about it. Typically, that's a week or so. Then you'll send the adverse action letter, and this is regular mail. And when you send that adverse action letter that says we're not going to hire you because of what's in your background check, you send a copy of the background check, copy of your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and the letter goes to them. You send the whole packet each time. So make sure you're familiar with that process. Questions we get about drug screens are, can we just ignore marijuana if we want to? Yes, your company, you can do whatever you want. If you're not a government contractor, especially if you're a private employer, you can say, look, we can't hire anybody because everybody fails for marijuana. Then you can still drug test and just ignore the marijuana result if you want, or you can stop drug testing. We have clients in Colorado who just said, we can't drug test at all. We would never hire anybody. Or you can stick with it just like you used to. A lot of companies still drug test. Even in states where recreational and medicinal marijuana are legal, you can still fire people for being under the influence at work in most states. So update your applications. If you're still using an employment application, which most companies have an online application, it's great for gathering information and pre-screening candidates in the process. Make sure you're being careful about, you don't want to ask for date of birth, social security number, criminal arrests or anything like that. Even if you're asking for conviction history, you want to have a disclaimer on there that's saying this doesn't disqualify you. Am I talking too fast?
No, you're doing great.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to ask about past history. The reason for that is there are laws about pay equity that say, if you say, what did you make in your last job, especially for women specifically, and then you base your current offer on what they made, then you're perpetuating this pay inequity between men and women in the same job. Instead, what you should do is say, this is what the job pays. Here's our pay range. Are you qualified for the job? And then you discuss that pay. If it fits for them, go through that. Yeah. One last thing about the application is, an advantage of having one is you can measure whether or not someone is being truthful or not on their application. Sometimes people exaggerate on their resumes. I would say 50% of people probably exaggerate.
I'd
probably
say more than that,
yeah. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people create job titles that didn't exist, all kinds of responsibilities they never had, all that kind of stuff on the resume. So it's good to ask questions of the application. In Georgia, if someone's dishonest on their application and they later file a workers' comp claim, they can be denied on their workers' comp claim. So there's some funky things along that it's worth paying attention to.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now for the really fun stuff. Forms and policies. What forms and policies should you take the time to review now that we're at the end of the year? So definitely the handbook. I always suggest to my clients that a new edition of the handbook goes out every year with new signatures, just to remind everybody that there is a handbook, because I haven't met many employees who've read the whole handbook. So, but reviewing that, updating any of the policies that you have in there, making sure that your minimum wage is still correct. And we'll talk about wage and hour in just a minute. Paid sick leave. A lot of states are implementing paid sick leave. So reviewing a lot of the leaves and the pay pieces is a really big deal. Right now, I'm asking all my clients when I talk to them, what question do you get like on a regular basis that maybe we could answer in the handbook so that we can refer employees back to it? Because the policies that need to be in the handbook are the ones that employees are asking about the most. So that's another way to go about figuring out what do you want to update in the handbook. The new I-9 form came out today. It's shorter, it's smaller. If you're in iSolved, it's already been updated. We're going to attach that form and all of the instructions to the resources for this webinar, so you'll be able to access that. It's all the same information. The rules haven't changed. It's just condensed. So you have to write smaller if you're doing it on paper, but it's all the same if you're doing it electronically. I would also look at job descriptions. So many times we put a job description in place and 3 years later, Scott's named himself CHRO, but his job description shows that he's an HR assistant. So a lot of times we need to go back and look at those. I suggest doing this during your annual review. So when you talk to your employees about their performance, show them the job description and say, hey, is this still true? And if not, let's update it, right? Because you want to make sure that those are up to date so that both the employee and you understand the expectations for the job and the physical requirements for when it comes to leaves and workers' comp. And, we're all pretty used to the same form of job description. One of the cool things we've done here is just name our top 5. So our job description just has the 5 top things that we're responsible for, and then all the other detail instead of sentences and bullet points under responsibilities. And I think that's really a clean way to go. So get creative with your job description. Make it fit your culture instead of the boring way that we're all used to doing it. As Scott just talked about, look at your pre-hire and your new hire forms. Are you using the current I-9? Are your pre-hire questions legal questions? So reviewing that would be great. Travel and expense policy, sometimes that changes, and sometimes you start at a small company and you don't have a whole lot of money to reimburse, and then you grow and maybe you're making more money so you can provide more expense payback. Travel and expense policy, yes?
I just want to jump in real quick on the travel and expense. One question we get is, if the current mileage rate is 65.5 cents for reimbursement, do we have to do that? And you don't. So you can do the full 65.5 cents. If you do less than that, then your employees can claim the difference on their taxes.
Good note. And now the expense management system is also in iSolve. So again, one more thing to add to bringing everything electronically in one place to maintain. But making sure that people understand the big thing with the travel and expense policy is travel time for non-exempt employees. And that's a big chunk of information to review. Other forms and policies, performance reviews. Again, is the performance review set up and designed to actually review the performance? Or do you need to have different reviews across different departments, right? So looking at that, making sure it's achieving what you want it to achieve. And if not, let's revamp it. Give us a call, we'll help. And then finally, employment agreements. If you do have employment agreements, I highly recommend having legal review those, because so many things have changed. So many things are different by state. But the NLRB has said that there's some verbiage you can't use when you're talking about confidentiality or non-competes. And a lot of them are federal, but there are a lot of state laws and changes. So if you do use an employment agreement, I would say have those checked out at least annually.
Yeah, a lot of companies are changing the non-compete language to like non-solicitation of clients or employees instead of just saying you can't be in this industry competing with us, because a lot of judges won't hold that up anymore. Okay, identify your compliance gaps. This is a biggie for HR folks. You need to know where you are in total compliance and where you have a little bit of exposure. And then you decide, is that a priority for you? Can you tolerate the level of risk that creates or not? Talk with the owners of the business or your organization and say, do we want to address this? And if you do, we can help you figure it out, or you can always research and do it on your own. So look at your processes. When I say processes, I'm thinking about your hiring process, your performance management process. How do you terminate? How do you track time and pay people? All of those things can affect your compliance and your exposure to possible litigation or any kind of claim. And we all know if we've ever been in a claim, it's not productive. It's a pretty big time drain, costs money. It's frustrating on every level. And so you'd rather avoid them if you can. Keeping up with minimum wage, they change all the time. We get emails probably weekly about minimum wage changes in different states because we have clients in almost every state. And a lot of people don't pay attention to that because they go, no, everybody makes minimum wage. Well, until minimum wage is $15 or $19 or stuff like that. In California, you've heard about that. We have clients in California who are losing their minds over these minimum wages, saying, I don't know how we're going to hire people and stay in business.
Well, that and it changes by city in California.
Yeah, it's local and city and state sometimes. So just pay attention to those and make sure you're clear on that. Another thing with minimum wage is making sure that you never deduct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the word.
Deduct is the word. Below minimum wage. So if somebody leaves the company and they owe you $500, you go, great, take it out of their last check. Well, a lot of states say before you do that, you have to get their signed approval. You have to notify them in advance, or even if you don't need that, you still can't take them below minimum wage. So if their whole check is $800, you're probably not going to be able to take $500 out of it. So you got to do the math on how many hours they worked, what's minimum wage, pay them at least that, and then you could take the rest if you had to. When you're looking at your filing system, a lot of our clients come to us, they're still on paper files. For a small business, that's not unusual at all. And so we help them go paperless. And when you go paperless and you set up digital employee documentation and filing and storage, just make sure you're aware of what the roles and access levels are for supervisors and employees, so people only see what they need to see or what you want them to see. Okay. I-9 and E-Verify, we talked about the new form for I-9. A lot of times when we start with new clients, we'll say, are you using E-Verify? And they go, what's E-Verify? So see if you should be doing that in your state. If you're in Georgia, yes, you are required to do that no matter what your size. And many other states, you are required to do that as well. When you're doing E-Verify, you take the information from the I-9 form, enter it on a government website, E-Verify, and it just confirms it, right? So when you're doing that, you need to keep copies of the supporting documents like the passport, driver's license, stuff like that. Keep that on record. One thing a lot of people are unaware of regarding E-Verify is if you do an audit and you find out that you have 20 current employees that were never E-Verified, you don't go back and E-Verify them. You don't E-Verify current employees. It's only for new employees as they come on. So if you miss some along the way, you missed them. It is what it is. Keep going. Record retention, basic rule for most HR employment-related forms and policies is 7 years. OSHA forms are 5 years. The I-9 is whichever is longer, 1 year past the date of termination or 3 years past the date of hire. So if somebody works there for 3 years, you got to keep it 1 more year, right? If they work there for 1 year, you got to keep it for 3 years after that. So it's whichever is longer, and then you can purge it. We do recommend purging your I-9s when you don't need them. If you're on paper files, keeping them separate as well. And then wage and hour compliance is a big one. Mm-hmm. So many ways to get in trouble with wage and hour compliance. I consider that two of the biggest, we're going to get into that. Mm-hmm. Sorry, before I start.
Tell us what the two biggest ones in your opinion are.
I was going to say two biggest liabilities for companies that I see. 3. One is if you have people driving company vehicles, that's a huge liability. So you got to be very careful about how that's managed. If you are serving alcohol, paying for alcohol, we got company parties coming up, holiday parties, right? A lot of people get fired after holiday parties because they get a little bit of that juice in them, and then they want to say things they didn't say before and do things they shouldn't do at work and all that, and it gets them in trouble. But there's also a lot of liability there where people driving a car after the company's provided alcohol. So be careful about how you manage that. And then the other thing is just how you pay people. Those are 3 big areas of liability for companies that commonly come up. So wage and hour compliance is very important, and Christina is going to talk about that
in just a minute.
In a minute.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
All right, but first, big question right now. Some people are saying, hey, I'm sick. I don't know if I have COVID or not. It could be the flu, could be a cold, but I don't know what it is. Is COVID paid leave is still a thing? And if you're asking about like regulated, formal, required COVID paid leave under the Fair Credit Reporting Act or any of that stuff, the answer is no. It is no longer a thing. There may be some states who say you need to accommodate leave. You do need to think about your PTO plans, your sick leave to comply with state laws and federal laws. But in terms of just COVID leave, you treat it like any other illness, like sick leave right now. That may change, but for now, that's the answer.
Awesome. Thank you. So this slide has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullets, and each bullet could be an hour-long webinar on their own. Don't worry, we won't do that to you. Let's just go over the topics that you need to consider when you're looking at year end and what do I need to review. So under wage and hour compliance, one of the things that the government is looking at right now is increasing the proposed salary level for exempt employees and raising that up. Now, they've done this a couple times in the past, and at the last minute, it's been ruled out by a tech judge in Texas or something. So for this, what we tell people is just go ahead and look and identify those employees who may need to get an increase if the salary level is increased and plan for that budget-wise. And then if it doesn't go through, you don't have to change anything. If it does, you're already set to do that and can make those changes in the system. That falls to the next one, job classifications. We talk a lot about exempt and non-exempt. A lot of our clients call it salaried and hourly. So the exempt level is a person who gets the same pay no matter what, every pay period, with a few exceptions. The non-exempt employees, hourly, are the ones that clock in and clock out and get paid for time worked. So their pay may fluctuate throughout the pay period. So making sure that you have your employees classified correctly is a big deal. There's fines that go along with it. If you have an employee that you're paying as an exempt level employee, but they should be non-exempt or hourly, you could be held liable for 3 years of back pay of overtime, along with fines and all kinds of headaches and damage to your reputation possibly. So really look into, are those classified correctly? Our team can absolutely help with that. There's different duties tests that we can run, and we'll talk through it with you. There will be some that are gray areas, right? And so together we can decide what that looks like. Pay practices, how often are you paying? There are some states that will not allow you to pay your employees monthly. I know most people are doing semi-monthly or biweekly, but we do have a few clients who pay monthly. And so you want to make sure if you're doing that you're following state law. Let's see, auto deducts, breaks, and comp time. Again, what Scott said, if you have deductions that come out of employees' paychecks, make sure that they're earning at least minimum wage. There are states that require breaks. Some states require them paid. Some states say they don't have to be paid. Lunch and meals in Georgia, they don't require you to give your employees any breaks. I don't recommend not doing that, but I would say we'll definitely look into that. States vary big time on that. And then comp time, which I think is I don't have many companies doing that. Do you? Using comp time anymore?
No, we tell them not to do it, not to talk about it either, because sometimes people misunderstand what it means. Mm-hmm. And when we say comp time, we're saying you're an hourly employee, you worked over 40 hours, but instead of paying you overtime, I'm going to let you off early next week, but I'll pay you for 40 hours. Well, then you're paying them at straight time, and they're missing out on the overtime rate that they earned. Now, if you work for the government, it's legal to do comp time. If you don't, you have to basically apply for approval to be able to do it with the Department of Labor. And I do not recommend inviting the Department of Labor into your business to look at how you pay people. So we typically say, don't do it. Don't even use the word. Just pay people the right way.
Absolutely. Independent contractors is the next thing on the list. We want to make sure that if you do have an independent contractor, that they truly are, by definition, an independent contractor. They work the hours that they need to in order to get the job done. They're using their own equipment and supplies. They have minimal supervision, if any, from you. It's truly more project work, or having an independent contractor to come in and do projects that your company does not specialize in, right? So if you are an engineering company, you may have an accountant as an independent contractor who works part-time working on your accounting. So really looking at, are we paying that person correctly, is something that I would recommend looking at for each independent contractor that you have at the end of the year. Time tracking. So making sure that you are accurately handling everybody's time, clocking in and clocking out, that you're not adjusting anybody's time to get out of doing overtime. I've seen that happen before. And make sure that your employees, if they miss a punch, come to you immediately so that they can get that in there and payroll can run smoothly. It's terrible when you get to payroll and then you find 10 employees don't have punches and then you got to go research it. So make sure that you're tracking time accurately and putting that in so that those non-exempt employees can get paid for every single hour that they work and at the right rate. Overtime bonus calculation. So when you're looking at bonus calculations and you're trying to figure out if you're basing it on an hourly rate, what you kind of have to look at is what has the employee averaged over the last few weeks, right? So if somebody has overtime, a lot of overtime, and you're basing it on their salary, looking at that adjusted hourly rate is important to look at. And then final pay requirements, do you have to give an employee their final paycheck on the day that you terminate them? Do you have until the next pay period? Does it differ between terminating employees and resigning employees? All of that varies, again, by state. So looking at all the states that you operate in and making sure that you're following each of those for the appropriate employee when they leave the company.
I want to go back real quick to this, the overtime bonus calculation. Yeah. This is something that most companies are not aware of. And most HR and payroll people have not heard of this, because when we talk with clients, a lot of times they're like, what are you talking about? So the overtime bonus calculation, just to be clear, is if you have hourly employees and you're paying them a bonus, you can pay them a bonus as a percentage of total pay, and that gets rid of this requirement. But if you're paying a bonus that is earned in January and you're paying it in February, then you're supposed to add the dollar amount of that bonus back to January's earnings, divide by time worked, come up with a new regular rate of pay, and then pay them the difference between the overtime you've already paid and what the new higher overtime rate is that includes the bonus. So I know that might sound confusing. If it is, give us a call and we can explain. Most companies don't do it because it's kind of a manual process, but there is liability there, and you should be doing it if you don't want to worry about Department of Labor coming knocking about that.
Yes, thank you for that very clear description.
Yes, no problem.
Appreciate it. All right, let's get organized. This is one of my favorite subjects here. How can we stay organized so that we can find the email that came through 3 months ago that had very pertinent information for this client and this person's pay? Well, creating those inbox subfolders is a great way to go. However it works for you, whether it's by topic, whether it's by employee, for me, it's by client. Whatever it takes, get organized, take a few hours if you need to, and then stick to that organization, right? Because we can fall out of being organized. So use this time now before we get into 2024 to get organized and walk into 2024 ready to go. Moving towards paperless, again, piles of paper, employee files, documents. Should I leave this out on my desk? Should I not? If somebody walks by, there may be information. If you can move towards the paperless, right, and use the system for what it's there for, then your office will be much cleaner. There'll be more space. Drawers may be empty. That would be kind of cool. So look at moving towards paperless. What can you put into the management system to get out of your office? This kind of talks to the files and binders. Where do you have files and binders? If you have those and you're not ready to get rid of them because they're not uploaded, can you put them somewhere else behind lock and key? Just cleaning all of that up. Now's a good time also to start looking at your vendor contracts. So even if you have, let's say you've got contracts with vendors that last 2 or 3 years, I still recommend at the end of the year looking through those so that you don't get complacent about, oh yeah, that's just the way we've always done it. Especially if you need to look at making some adjustments in your budget. That's a place to start, is what do those vendor contracts look like? HR certification, back to the very first slide, make sure that you are looking at when is that due, you've got it on your calendar and you're working towards getting those credits. If there's employees on leave, like FML leave or extended leave, go back and look at when are they supposed to return? Has anybody checked in with them? Does it need to be extended? So a lot of times we kind of forget about that because we put them on leave and then we go about our day. So keeping track of those people that are out there and checking in. And then licensing, tracking, and updating. If you have to have a current driver's license on employees or certain certifications, all that can be housed in iSolved in their employee record. And you can actually attach a date to that so that if my license is getting ready to expire and Scott's attached a date to it, the system can send me a reminder. It says, hey, Christine, you need to go renew your driver's license or whatever the certification may be. So using the system again for that will help you get organized. So in the end, all of this is online and there's no paper anywhere and you're ready to hit the ground running.
All right. In terms of organization as well, it's good to do a little self-audit every once in a while. Look in your payroll system, look at your payroll data and say, do we have this for every employee? Do we have a current address? Do I have a current personal email if I need it? Do I have a cell phone number? Do I have an emergency contact? Ask your employees to jump in there and update those things and then go through them one by one and just see if you've got everything you'd like to have in there. With EEO1 reports due for a lot of our clients, you want to make sure you have all that EEO1 demographic data, the voluntary election forms completed as well. Sometimes we get questions about what if employees don't complete it. It is okay as a manager to go in and complete that information based on observation. If the employee chose not to complete it, that's totally fine because you need all of the data to submit the report. But yeah, check all this stuff up. Look at your tax elections. I got a question from a client yesterday saying an employee was saying he was exempt from taxes, from paying taxes. And he said, well, can that be true? And there are certain times when employees might be exempt from federal taxes. Typically, you're going to have to do the state taxes. But if they say they're exempt, you kind of keep a record of it. If it's challenged by the IRS, they have to submit some proof for that. But typically, if an employee says I'm exempt or they claim 10 dependents when you know they have one kid, you know, that's okay. You roll with it and they're responsible for their taxes as long as the company's paying their version along the way. You know, it's not that big of a deal. PTO and vacation balances, make sure though you're prepared for if you're on a calendar year or fiscal year, when that flips over, sometimes PTO plans are affected. So just double checking with your payroll provider about any rollover, carryover, balances, resets, anything you're doing there, and make sure you're all on the same page on that so that people's balances are still correct when they log in and look in their employee self-service. Your holiday schedule may change. Make sure people know what that is and announce it ahead of time. We always recommend having a pay calendar that you share with your folks as well so that they know when to submit their time, close their time, managers know when to approve and all that. And so people know exactly when they're getting paid.
Yeah, I just used our calendar yesterday to see what the cadence was for us. So
there you go.
Very good. Okay, so we talked in the beginning about making sure we were taking care of ourselves. So now let's make sure that we're taking care of our employees and helping them understand the ways of the company and doing some training with them. So you first off, using a learning management system is great, right? Because you can assign courses electronically and employees can choose when they're going to take them within a certain window. This is great for those that have different kinds of shifts and it's hard to get everybody into the same room. And a lot of topics are just, they're done really well through the learning management system. And again, like I said, you can actually add your own trainings to that too, and then allow your employees to manage their time a little bit more. So in the learning management system that we have, there's harassment and discrimination trainings that are required for you to send out. Some states have cadences for how often employees need to take harassment and discrimination training. There's different levels, a supervisor level and employee level. So making sure that you understand the state requirements that you're in is a big deal for that. A lot of companies are starting to do diversity and inclusion training also. We've got a lot of good stuff housed in our learning management system. Wage and hour compliance, make sure that your managers understand that, right? Because they're the first line to the employees and they may not know all of the ins and outs. So training them may even be, if you get a question about overtime, send them to HR, right? So making sure they're aware of that. And with that comes the HR 101 for supervisors. Many companies, and I love this, right? You get an employee, they're great, and you start giving them more and more responsibility, and that's wonderful. I love hiring from within. What we forget is that we haven't trained them on how to be a supervisor, on the employment laws, what they can and can't do, what they can and can't say. So holding a training for, I would say quarterly training for new supervisors is really a great way to go and will help with compliance. And then management skills training, again, just kind of all coming into one. You've got both the law side of the training and how do you do performance reviews? You know, how do you provide feedback? Document, right? If you get the new supervisors, train them early to make that documentation, because that's the hardest thing to teach is keeping that documentation on employees. And then of course you've got culture and performance management. All of this are things that really help increase your team effort, your culture, and brings everybody together, because now employees are seeing that you do care for them, the company cares for them and wants them to grow and get the proper training.
All right. So we're hitting a little bit of everything today, trying to get a big picture view of everything to think about at the end of the year as you're wrapping up. And culture and brand is something you want to be intentional about. That's a word I like to use because I think it represents your focus and control and influence a little bit. When you're talking about your culture, you want to think about, are we supporting our culture? Are we reinforcing our culture? Are we supporting our brand, reinforcing our brand as a company? And that can be reflected in job ads, in LinkedIn posts, and anything else you put out there on social media these days. So be intentional about what you are putting out there and say, does this represent the company? Obviously, look at your policies about social media and your handbook. Those get updated, pretty frequently. And a lot of times they say, if you're an employee and you're posting something about the company or relative to the company, you need to say that this is my personal opinion. I'm not representing the company or whatever, if you're talking about stuff like that. But think about events you can have that represent your company. Can you do stay surveys with your employee, which, by the way, are preferable to exit surveys? So find out why your employees stay. What keeps you here? Why did you choose us? What would you like to change? What should we start doing, stop doing? What is it about this company that you love, right? We do this survey quarterly at Thread.
Mm-hmm.
We post our score. We post the feedback, good, bad, and ugly for all employees to see. And we talk about what the results are, and then we take action on those items, right? So people see that they have a voice at the company, that they are heard, and that they actually have an impact. Their feedback matters. It's not like we just ask about it, get the responses, grumble, and then stick it in a drawer, which I have seen happen many times at small businesses. So if you're going to ask a question, you need to be open to the answer, whether you like it or not. You're going to ask, you got to listen and respond. Look about your policies and practices. Sometimes handbooks exist for 3 years, 4 years. One time I went to a bank and they brought out their handbook, and it was on typewriter pages in a binder. That's how old it was. So wow. It was before word processors.
Goodness.
They were due for a policy update.
Mm-hmm.
Candidate feedback. So a lot of times now candidates will rate your company in terms of the interview and pre-hire screening process, whether you hire them or not. So just like you can go to Glassdoor and look at how employees rate your company and culture and leadership, candidates can also rate your company on this new hire process. So we encourage everybody to communicate during that process. Say to every applicant, thank you for your interest. If you're eligible for the next step, we will reach out. If not, we wish you the best, that kind of thing. If you interview someone even once, make sure you follow up with them pretty quickly after and let them know if they're still in the running or not. If you're open to giving them a little feedback, that's fine. A lot of companies aren't, but candidates do appreciate it. And more than anything else, they appreciate you telling them we're moving on to somebody else, because then they go, okay, otherwise I'd keep this hanging out there and now I can let it go and move on to other things, because you're respecting their time by communicating with them and giving that feedback. And then intentional is there again, intentionally is to be intentional about your messaging and make sure it represents what your company values are. You should be able to point to any employee who works in your company and say, what are our core values? And if they don't know them, then you're not talking about them enough. So make it a point to have everybody know clearly what all your core values are and how those values translate into behavior and decisions at work.
Okay. Oh, that one's analyze and plan.
Is that me?
Yeah. Sorry,
okay.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No problem. It's me. Good time at the end of the year too. Now, if you're a church, you're ramping up for busy season. It's big time now towards the end of the year here. If you're like us and you're a payroll company as well, the end of the year is big time, busy season as well. But for some of you, once after Halloween hits, things kind of slow down a little bit and everybody's like, don't bug me, let me do my thing and coast through this year, right? So it's a good time to look back on this year, last year, and do some analyzing and some planning, right? So look at your employee turnover. Break down your employee turnover by department, by position, the month they were hired, how long they've been there, everything else, why they left, and then see what you can get out of that information, and then address those issues to reduce your employee turnover, because turnover, it hurts you in almost every way. It's better not to have it if you can avoid it. Same thing with your incident rates with workers' comp, any injuries, near misses, things like that. Track those, see how people are getting hurt. And again, break that down by position, by length of time in the job, by department, by manager, by all those things, and see what the trends are, and then address those with the goal of preventing injuries in the future and putting that into your safety program as you go along. It's a great time to look at your benefit plan design and options. So talk to your brokers. You can do surveys with your employees. What do you wish we had? What are we missing? Everybody's going to say it's too expensive. That's just the way it is in the world right now. That's not a whole lot you can do about that, but get a little creative or contribute more. It's a simple answer. It's a hard solution because benefits just keep getting more expensive, but sometimes you're offering a benefit that's not being used and it's costing you money to do that. So you can drop that, switch it up to something else. It can be a big competitive advantage to have a great benefits program. I'm amazed at the benefits we have at Thread. As a smaller organization, we're in the 50 and under employee category right now, and we have amazing health insurance benefits and paid short-term, long-term disability, safe harbor 401k matching. We give 4 weeks of PTO right out of the gate, all this kind of stuff. So it is possible as a small and growing business to give great benefits. Work with a great broker and they'll help you out there.
Let me jump in real quick. I did have one of my clients, they've done the benefits survey 2 years in a row, and both times they were able to make some really good changes, like you said, for ones that people aren't using, or would you rather this or that? And, a lot of people said rather this. So they were able to really reshape their benefits plans at the end of the year to more closely work with the employees and what they were looking for. So I think that's a great way to go, the benefits survey.
If your broker hands you your renewal 2 weeks before you need to sign it, or you lose your rates, then you should probably be shopping brokers, right? And we work with a lot of great brokers. We'd be glad to introduce you to someone who fits what you're looking for. But typically, the best brokers will start talking to you 60, 90 days out about plan design, options, ideas, start talking to you about different cost levels and contribution levels and all those things. And they'll get all that mapped out so you feel prepared and your employees feel like they're getting stuff that really benefits them and can help you be more competitive when you're attracting talent out there. Make sure that what you're doing on the HR team aligns with your company goals. Sometimes HR starts going this way when the company's going that way. And we're like, wait a minute, we didn't know. So make sure you know what's going on, what the company goals are for the year, what the plan is, and that you're on board with that and aligned with that so you can help support the company as you go. And then always look at leading indicators in terms of performance. Make sure you know what your metrics are that really matter to you, not just by position, but as a department and as a company. The one thing that HR people, I've been doing HR since the 90s, and the theme of get a seat at the table has been around forever. And the answer to that is almost always that, you need to know more about how the business operates, how they make money, what really matters, and then contribute to that, from an HR perspective, if you want to get there.
Yeah, very well said. Okay, so homework. Well, if you want to, what I'd love for you to look at from here is now what kind of goals can you put in place? Are you going to look at your compliance gaps? Are you going to look at the skills and knowledge gaps, processes, technology? Do you need to add some more technology to make yourself and your department more efficient? Documentation and organization. Are you working on engagement? That's a lot. I would love for you to do all of that stuff. But if you're not already working with us, these are things that we can help you with and help you plan for, design next steps, put a plan in place, and help you understand how is this going to make my life better, aligned with company goals to help us, in the future. So I would really say, look through some of these, maybe pick one or two that you want to work on. Call us if you have questions on what do I do next. Remind me what that means. We're here. And a lot of our clients don't have time to do all of this, and which is a good reason for using us. We're that fractional HR service that can come in alongside of you to help you reach your goals.
Thank you for jumping on today. Again, the recording of this webinar will be available on our website soon. Our awesome marketing team will follow up with an email to you along with the recertification credits for HRCI and SHRM. And just keep us in mind. Looks like Christina's name is doubled up on
They
this
can't
side.
email me.
Yeah.
They are only going to email you.
Her name is blotted out for some reason, but my email's there. So, hey, email me directly. We will follow up. Thread, we have iSolved payroll software, which is an end-to-end software. It has everything from applicant tracking, performance management, benefits, time, payroll, learning management. It just goes on and on. It has it all, and it's a phenomenal system. And then Christina and I work on the service side. Our managed services include HR support, and we are truly proactive. We have a recurring monthly meeting with you. So we're not waiting on you to drive this process. We're driving it for you. You have a dedicated person who you meet with every month instead of calling into a call center or making an appointment to ask a question. We're going to be there for you all the time. We also offer onboarding assistance, recruiting, and managed payroll, where we can take that payroll off your plate and do it for you if you're on iSolved with us. So if you're not working with us already, we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.